Imagine waking up and the coffee tastes okay, your place looks familiar, but there's just this feeling that the whole picture is off.
Yeah, like something's fundamentally not right, even if you can't immediately pin it down.
Exactly. And that's pretty much the unsettling morning Ensign Harry Kim gets in the Voyager episode, Non Sequitur.
A classic what-if scenario.
Right. And you, our listener, mentioned you were curious about these alternate reality stories, how tiny changes can just ripple outwards. So, okay, let's dive into this warped version of Harry's life.
It's a really compelling setup, isn't it? We're going to explore Harry's bizarre new reality. He's in San Francisco, Earth, 2372.
Yeah, a timeline where he never joined Voyager at all.
And what's fascinating is tracing how that single decision or non-decision, I guess, changes everything. Not just for him, but for someone else really close to him, too.
For sure. We're going to be looking at some big what-ifs here. Like, what if one specific moment in your past just didn't happen?
How different would things be? How different would you be?
Yeah, what connections would you have lost? What paths might have opened up instead?
And ultimately, what does this tell us about the choices we do end up making, you know?
To help us unpack all this, we've gathered quite a bit of material.
Yeah, we've looked at reviews of Non Sequitur, places like Jammer's Reviews, Do Reviews. The M0V blog had some interesting takes.
And viewer comments, too, plus the details from IMDb and Memory Alpha, which are always great resources.
And even found a personal rewatch blog, looked at script excerpts, kind of a full picture.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Try to pull out the core ideas this alternate reality shows us about Harry Kim's character, the whole nature of choice, and maybe the surprising value in the tough roads we sometimes find ourselves on.
Sounds good. Where do we start? Harry waking up.
Let's do it. Harry wakes up, he's on Earth, in his bed, Libby's there, his girlfriend.
And he's got this apparently successful career as a Starfleet engineer designing ships.
A world away from Voyager, literally. So what are the first, little clues that tell Harry and us that this isn't right?
Well, right off the bat, there are these little inconsistencies. Libby makes an offhand comment, doesn't she, about going to a Voyager memorial service.
Oof. Yeah, for Harry, Voyager is happening now. That must have been incredibly jarring.
Totally. And then when he gets to his supposed office, his job, he doesn't recognize the work. He's supposed to be leading this design project, but it's all unfamiliar.
Like being thrown on stage in the middle of a play you haven't read.
Exactly. It's those little cracks in the facade that start telling him something seriously wrong.
And then he finds the big one, the huge divergence. He checks the Starfleet records.
Right, and discovers he wasn't assigned to Voyager. Okay, that makes sense with his current reality. But then
Tom Paris wasn't either. And the reason, it's wild.
It is. The records say Paris got arrested by Odo back on DS9, before Voyager left.
All over some bar fight with Quark?
Yeah.
About Lobi crystals, of all things.
A fight that, in the timeline we know, just didn't blow up like that. It's such a tiny detail to hinge on.
It really shows that butterfly effect, doesn't it? That little interaction, or lack thereof, completely changes Paris's future in this reality.
Absolutely. And didn't Harry actually, intervene in that fight in the original timeline? Prevent it from escalating?
I think you're right. So his absence here indirectly leads to Paris's arrest.
Wow. Makes you wonder about all those tiny moments in our own lives, you know? The things we don't even notice that might be steering us.
So Harry, trying to make sense of this mess, he tracks down this alternate Tom Paris. He finds him in Marseille, France. What's this Paris like?
Oh, it's pretty bleak, actually. A real contrast to the Lieutenant Paris we know.
How so?
Harry finds him basically hustling pool in a bar. He seems aimless, kind of cynical. The spark, the pilot skill, the officer potential, it's just not there.
Wow. So the Voyager experience really did shape him.
Massively. One commenter we saw pointed out, this version of Paris, this sort of washed out version, actually has a lot of dramatic depth. It showed what he could have become without Voyager giving him that chance, that structure.
A real road not taken moment.
Yeah.
Heavy stuff.
Definitely.
Okay, but back to Harry. He's got, on paper, a pretty sweet deal here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Loving fiance, good career, he's home on Earth.
Seems ideal, doesn't it?
Yeah, but he's clearly miserable. He's unsettled. Why doesn't he just roll with it? Accept this seemingly better life?
Well, I think that gets to something really fundamental about what makes us tick, doesn't it? It's not just about the external stuff. He feels displaced, like an imposter in his own life. You see it in his talks with Libby. He feels like things just aren't supposed to be this way.
There was that review on an MAOV blog that pointed this out too, right? That Harry seems almost weirdly uninterested in staying.
Yeah, like he's using the whole timeline is wrong thing almost as an excuse to get back to Voyager rather than genuinely wanting this better life.
Which suggests that comfort and success aren't the whole story for him. Or maybe for anyone.
Exactly. Something deeper is missing. Purpose. Connection.
And it seems like his drive to get back isn't purely selfish either. It's not just about fixing his situation.
No, not entirely. He mentions Danny Bird, another crewmate missing from this reality, but it's his focus on Paris that really stands out.
He feels responsible, doesn't he?
He does. He literally says something like, fate wasn't so kind to him here, talking about Paris.
That shows real loyalty, considering this isn't even the Paris he knows.
It really does. It shows that his connection to the Voyager crew runs deep. He sees that this timeline screw-up hasn't just messed things up for him, it's actively harmed someone he feels connected to.
Okay, so how does he even begin to fix this? This is where Cosimo comes in, right? The coffee shop guy?
Yes, Cosimo. The slightly controversial plot device.
Yeah, some viewers found him a bit too convenient, didn't they? Like, just happens to be this expert on temporal anomalies running a coffee stand.
It does stretch things a bit, admittedly, but, narratively he serves a purpose. He's the exposition delivery system.
The guy who explains the technobabble.
Pretty much. He explains the temporal, what's it, how Harry got there, and crucially, offers him a potential way back. He's the key, plausible or not.
Right. He gives Harry the how. But Harry still needs help to actually do it. He needs the alternate Tom Paris.
And that's another fascinating term, because this Paris, the cynical pool shark, he's got no love lost for Starfleet. He's pretty bitter.
And understandably so from his perspective.
Yeah. But Harry persists, and eventually this Paris agrees to help him. He ends up risking his own life, essentially.
What does that tell us about this version of Paris?
I think it shows that even though his life went down a much rougher path, there's still a core of decency there. Maybe a flicker of the man he could have been, the man the other Paris is.
That underlying character is still present.
Exactly. His helping Harry, especially leading up to that shuttlecraft sequence and the explosion, it suggests that even in this lesser life, some fundamental goodness remained.
Which makes his apparent sacrifice even more poignant.
It really does.
And so, through all that, Harry manages it, he gets back. Back to Voyager.
Back to the ship lost light years from home, full of dangers.
And yet, it immediately feels like home for him, doesn't it? More than Earth did.
Absolutely. That reunion with the real Tom Paris, the one he actually shared all those Delta Quadrant experiences with, it really hits home.
It underscores that bond they built.
For sure. There was a review, I think, that said something really insightful here about how Harry found real warmth and the strength of a true community on Voyager. Something he never could have gotten in that kind of sterile, predictable career back on Earth, even if it looked better on the surface.
So the shared struggle, the shared journey, created something more valuable than comfort.
Precisely. The familiar, even the difficult familiar, felt more real, more fulfilling.
Okay, so let's sort of pull back and think about the big picture here. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive into non sequitur?
Well, first, I think it's a really stark illustration of the ripple effect. How tiny, seemingly random events,
Like a bar fight not quite happening.
exactly, can just cascade outwards and have these massive, unpredictable consequences. Not just for you, but for people connected to you. Tom Paris's life is completely derailed by it here.
That's a big one. What else?
Second, it really challenges the idea of what a better life actually looks like. On paper, Harry's Earth life was better, safer, more successful, fiancé.
That it lacked something crucial.
Right. It lacked the deep connections, the shared purpose, maybe even the sense of belonging he found, surprisingly, on Voyager. Despite all the hardships and being lost, his wanting to go back speaks volumes.
Okay. And a final point.
I think ultimately it's a reminder that our experiences, all of them, especially the challenging ones, are what forge who we become.
They shape our identity and the relationships we end up valuing the most.
Yeah. Harry wouldn't be the Ensign Kim we know without everything he went through in the Delta Quadrant. And his bond with the crew, especially Tom, is a direct product of that shared, difficult journey.
So for you, the learner, listening to this, non sequitur isn't just, a cool sci-fi story.
No, it's more than that. It's kind of a potent reminder that the paths we take, all the twists and turns, They really do add up to who we are.
And they build the connections that matter, the easy, comfortable route.
Yeah.
Well, it isn't always the one where we actually thrive or make the biggest difference, maybe.
Which leads to a bit of a provocative thought for you to chew on.
Go for it.
If you were offered an alternate life, one that looked, objectively better by society's standards, more money, more success, less struggle. But taking it meant wiping away the experiences, the relationships, the struggles that have actually defined who you are right now. Would you take that deal?
That's a tough one.
It is. And thinking about your answer, what does that tell you about what you genuinely, truly value deep down?
Makes you think. This whole episode really dives into that butterfly effect idea, the significance of small choices.
Definitely. It might be interesting to think about other alternate reality stories, books, movies, maybe even just those what-if moments you ponder about your own life.
How do they show the power of small events?
Yeah. And maybe think specifically about Voyager, too. How different might other crew members' lives have been if that caretaker array hadn't pulled them across the galaxy? What paths weren't taken for Janeway or Chakotay or Seven?
Lots to consider there.
Always is with Trek.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, I hope it gave you a fresh look at non sequitur and maybe sparked a few interesting thoughts.
Until our next exploration, keep questioning.
And keep learning.